The Wells Report returns in 30 seconds. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. What is the Wells Report, you may ask? Okay, fine, I can tell you. We report the news, honestly and fairly. We analyze that news for fact and bias. We point out both. In short, we de-propagandize the mainstream media's news. We do make commentary, not news. Commentary is opinion. Yours and mine. We compare. That's called a debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. Good morning. It's great to have you here. It's 9 o'clock in the Central Time Zone. If you're watching this later, well, you can find us live on Facebook, YouTube, X, Twitch, and Rumble. And we should be on all of those. So if you are on one of those, please do check in. As a matter of fact, if you're not on one of those, find the chat room for the Wells Report and check in, okay? Sure would appreciate it. It would be awfully nice. Like to know where you are watching this on what platform. And let's get started. What do you say? Time now for the front page. This is a digest of news. First news look today from Israel and Hamas. The war is continuing. Hamas commander has been killed. Mossab Hassan Youssef, whose father is a founding Hamas leader, joined Fox and Friends this morning, called on the United States to urge Egypt to open its borders to Palestinian refugees. We need to somehow put pressure on the Egyptian government so they can open their border for the Gazans to depart. Quote, instead of the United Nations blaming everybody, saying humanitarian crisis, they should allow civilians to evacuate. Egypt has to open its borders. The United States must put pressure, apply tremendous pressure on the Egyptian government to open the freaking border. And once again, this is Mossab Hassan Youssef. He is the son of a Hamas leader, one of the founding Hamas leaders. Egypt has so far refused to take in Palestinian refugees. The president of Egypt, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, says that a mass influx of refugees from Gaza would eliminate the Palestinian nationalist cause. Rocket sirens at this hour are sounding in Tel Aviv and surrounding suburbs on Tuesday as IDF forces are identifying ground operations inside the Gaza Strip. Hezbollah terrorists fired missiles at two IDF posts on Israel's northern border with Lebanon, according to the IDF. The Army reported a separate strike against a terror cell in southern Lebanon that it was planning to shoot an anti-tank guided missile at northern Israel. The military said earlier IDF troops are engaged in fierce battles against Hamas terrorists deep in the Gaza Strip. IDF forces attacked a Hamas outpost in the northern Gaza Strip and killed dozens of terrorists, also seizing weapons. The Israeli attacks targeted anti-tank missile batteries, missile launching position, observation posts, and seized explosives and weapons, according to the IDF. The Israeli military detected two suspected drone infiltrations into the country's territory. This happened this morning, according to Fox News correspondent Trey Yingst. The drones were likely launched by Houthi rebels in Yemen and came toward Israel through the Red Sea, according to Israeli media. Fighting continues in the southern border of Israel as IDF troops are also conducting ground operations in Gaza. Over the last day, combined IDF Israeli Defense Forces struck approximately 300 targets, including an anti-tank missile and rocket launch post below the shafts, as well as military compounds inside underground tunnels belonging to the Hamas terrorist organization. This, according to the Israeli military. Is it possible that much of the funding that has been given to the Palestinian people has not reached the Palestinian people, but instead only lined the pockets of major Hamas leaders? According to the State of Israel, through their Hamas account, their LinkedIn account, it is possible that Hamas leaders are actually billionaires. Hamas leaders' net worth, Abu Marzouk, $3 billion. Khaled Mashal, $4 billion. Ismail Haniyeh, $4 billion. Hamas's annual turnover, $1 billion. According to the Israeli State Department, while Gazans are deprived of basic needs, Hamas uses aids and funds to line their own pockets. U.S. and Gulf nations are targeting what they call is a Hamas hedge fund. The United States, along with some Middle Eastern nations, are stepping up efforts to target a secret Hamas investment portfolio government officials believe to be worth up to $1 billion to target the Hamas investment portfolio. A U.S. official said today the Treasury Department is working with members of the Gulf Cooperation Council, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates. Following the Hamas terror attacks on Israel, U.S. and Saudi officials convened an emergency meeting today in Riyadh of the Terrorist Financing Targeting Center, which includes the U.S. and GCC nations. The mission was originally scheduled to take place in November. So indeed, is all the humanitarian funding for the Palestinian people going to the Palestinian people or going into a Swiss bank account on the part of Hamas leadership? News of the states this morning. Out of Maine, a more detailed portrait of shooter Robert Card is emerging. 3 months before the deadly shooting rampage in Lewiston, Maine, leaders of the gunman's Army Reserve unit said he was behaving erratically, and the Army decided he should not have a weapon, handle ammunition, or, quote, participate in live fire activity, unquote. This according to an Army spokesperson. The gunman, Robert Card, killed 18 people, injured 13 others in the shootings. October 25th at a bar in a bowling alley. After a 2-day manhunt, he was found dead in an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound incident. In July, leaders of his unit said he was behaving erratically while training at the U.S. Military Academy and asked for law enforcement to be contacted, quote, out of concern for his safety. This, according to a spokesperson for the New York Army National Guard. A U.S. official said he did not participate in any training because almost within the first day, he started acting erratically. The New York State Police took him to an Army hospital at West Point for a medical evaluation, according to the National Guard. The state police declined to comment on the incident, citing an active investigation, as you know from news reports. After this particular examination, he spent 2 weeks in a mental health facility. Out of Colorado this morning, a heavily armed man was found dead inside an amusement park. A heavily armed man who appeared to be planning to shoot up a mountaintop amusement park at Glenwood Caverns Adventure Park in Colorado killed himself before carrying out his plan, this according to authorities. The Garfield County Sheriff's Office said park officials found the 20-year-old man dead inside the park Saturday morning before opening it to the public. Authorities say the man apparently broke into the park while it was closed, adding he was armed with an AR-style rifle, a handgun, and explosives. He was also wearing tactical clothing and body armor. Sheriff Lou Valario, in a message that was found, said a message was found written on the wall of a woman's bathroom where the man was found, which read, "I'm not a killer. I just want to get into the caves," unquote. The sheriff could not verify whether the man who was found dead actually wrote the message. Out of Michigan this morning, a judge wants to know why 2 men convicted of secondary roles in a plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer have been transferred, why they have been transferred to federal prisons. Paul Billar and Joe Morrison are entitled to appeal their convictions following a trial on state charges in Jackson County in 2022. But their lawyers say it's extremely hard to work with them hundreds of miles away, even out of state. They said the distance interferes with the right to have access to Michigan courts. The transfer is mind-boggling and appalling, said Michael Farone, who represents Morrison. Whatever we may say about the case, however we may feel about it, I think we can agree we're not dealing with Al-Qaeda, said Farone to a federal judge, a state judge on Friday, referring to the Middle East terror group. Billar, Morrison, Musico were found guilty of providing material support for a terrorist act and other charges. They had no direct role in the kidnapping conspiracy, but had held gun training with leader Adam Fox and shared disgust for Whitmer, according to police and public officials, especially after COVID-19 restrictions were imposed. Musico was sentenced to at least 12 years in prison. Morrison got 10 years. Bilar received 7. Without the information about why this transfer occurred, it feels like we're flying blind. This according to Judge Thomas Wilson. Out of Kentucky today, this from Fox News, a far-left group being funded by liberal billionaire George Soros is targeting Kentucky Attorney General and gubernatorial candidate Daniel Cameron, a black Republican, with an ad disparaging him as an Uncle Tom. Black Voters Matter Action PAC, which FEC filings show received millions from Soros Super PAC, has been running radio ads on a local R&B station based in Jeffersontown, Kentucky, describing Cameron as Uncle Daniel Cameron and accusing him of betraying his race by declaring, quote, all skin folk ain't kinfolk, unquote. What's up, Kentucky? It's election time. All skin folk ain't kinfolk. Over the past few years, we've taken to the streets to demand racial justice, to demand health care, and to make the right decisions about our own bodies. And now, Uncle Daniel Cameron is threatening to take us backwards. The same man who refused to seek justice for Breonna Taylor now wants to run our whole state. There is more. Out of New York, in 2014, the creators of Nightscope told USA Today they wanted to create a fleet of robots that would cruise through shopping malls, corporate campuses, and other public spaces, collecting data and alerting law enforcement when they spotted trouble. 10 years later, one of the public safety technology's 5'2", 400-pound robots is working the graveyard shift, patrolling Times Square and the subway station there for the country's largest police department alongside a human New York Police Department officer. Experts including Matthew Garaglia, a senior policy analyst at the San Francisco-based Electronic Frontier Foundation, said, like the rise of gunshot detection. And finally, out of Fox News, Vice President Harris is staking an administration claim to stop algorithmic discrimination. Vice President Kamala Harris said yesterday it's the Biden administration's duty to prevent algorithmic discrimination when it comes to the field of artificial intelligence and to ensure its benefits are shared equitably among society. Her continuation of what some have called the administration's effort to make AI woke happened during her remarks alongside President Biden at the White House just before he signed an executive order establishing AI standards for private companies. Quote, I believe we have a moral, ethical, and societal duty to make sure that AI is adopted and advanced in a way that protects the public from potential harm and to ensure that everyone is able to enjoy its benefits. Since we took office, President Biden and I have worked to uphold that duty, Harris told a crowd gathered in the White House East Room. Oh, one more thing. It turns out that a Florida man is a zombie. Actually, he has come back from the dead, quite literally. It isn't because of his killer zombie impression, but rather he came back from the dead after police accidentally marked a fender bender he was involved with as a fatal accident. Moises Ramos, 51-year-old real estate broker, got into a minor car accident. The woman hit him in the rear of his car, spun it around. The police said that he had died in the accident. He found that out when he tried to become an Uber driver in 2022. He was denied because he was dead. Apparently, Uber refuses to hire dead drivers to drive people around under an Uber franchise. Good piece of information to have with you on Halloween today, which is what it is, and that is today's front page. I'm John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us here on the Wells Report. We're going to flesh out some of these stories and a lot more. We're going to go to Israel and find out an awful lot about what's going on there, and we'll get that started along with other things as we move through Tuesday here on the Wells Report.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
Okay. Boy, that was wild. And I'm sitting there wondering, what happened to my music? Well, the computers are working it out amongst themselves, and by golly, they've done it. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. There are all kinds of crazy and creepy things happening on Halloween. One of them happens to be something that you and I have talked about before. It has to do with a migration of wolf spiders, wrongly called tarantulas, that occurs in the high deserts of Western America. In Death Valley specifically, it can be a little bit disconcerting just to see the spiders, but it can even be worse if you happen to be driving down a road that they're crossing.
Situation for drivers in Death Valley. One Swiss couple who says they wouldn't hurt a fly slammed on their brakes to avoid hitting the spider. That then caused a motorcyclist behind them to crash into their rented camper van. The motorcyclist was taken to a local hospital. Park rangers say watch out for wildlife as the area is still recovering from flood damage. If you were worried about the tarantula, the National Park Service says the spider walked away unscathed.
Yeah. The problem with that is that they go in these giant herds. I mean, there are herds of these. They go west in the fall and east in the spring. It's kind of a mating thing. And that's, by the way, not the only one. Check this out. As we zero in on wildlife, and we do mean wildlife, on Halloween. I've never seen this before.
It honestly was like such a surreal, kind of almost like mystical experience.
A ghost of the forest graced the property of Abby Kabler Tuesday morning.
All of a sudden I hear my husband go, "Oh my gosh, babe, get out here now." Like kind of freaking out, a little panicky. And I run out there and he goes, "There's a white deer, I swear." And we look out the window and sure enough, there he is, just kind of like right on the other side of our porch, closer to the tree line, just eating away on the bushes.
Captivated by the snow white deer.
He was snapping pictures. I was taking the video.
Like a clip out of a Christmas movie.
"We have to send this to the news."
His statuesque stature and muscles a spectacle to watch.
In the video, you can kind of see his red eyes for a second. You can see his pink ears. So it's so crazy. He's like true albino.
A rare occurrence, with the TWRA saying experts guesstimate only 1 in 20 to 30,000 deer become albinos. Years ago, an albino buck known as Old Caney stole the hearts of residents in Chapel Hill. A full-body mount of Old Caney was given to the town on permanent loan from the TWRA in 2022 after he was fatally hit by a car.
I kind of did a little bit of research, and I guess our area has a really prevalent genetic lineage of albino deer. And so there's a hot spot in our area for the mutation. And then there's also supposedly another hot spot kind of closer to Kentucky. But you see more of them around here, which is interesting.
Kabler growing fond of the albino that she says has magically appeared twice on her property now, affectionately naming him Casper.
It's close to Halloween. He's bright white, and he was here and then he was gone. So it kind of felt like Casper, the friendly albino deer.
There you go. Casper the friendly albino deer. I lived in the mountains of western North Carolina, and you've seen typical gray squirrels. In the western part of North Carolina, we also have white squirrels. They are not albinos, but they are actually white. They have slight streaks of gray on their backs and on their forepaws. And it's interesting. It's fascinating. When we fed squirrels and birds in our house in western North Carolina. We got to see so many different kinds. And we had this big picture window in our kitchen. And right there was an oak tree, and we built all of the feeders there, and we would sit there and watch the wildlife go by. Never seen an albino deer before, never even heard of them before, but I thought you'd like to see that as we get rolling through the morning news here on the Wells Report, coming up in just a couple of seconds. The Israeli war. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says there will be no ceasefire, and I can understand why. And the world is reacting, and we'll have all of that as we continue here on the Wells Report. Thanks again for joining us. Back in just a moment.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost. How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
Good morning. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our chat room is flying. There are a bunch of people out there. Thanks very much for joining us on the Wells Report. We do this every single morning between 9 and 11 a.m. Central Time. We bring you the news, honestly, fairly, and we analyze it for fact and bias. We point that stuff out. We de-propagandize the mainstream media. And you can help. Telephone number 817-379-2172. You can find it right there on the very fancy high dollar graphics we have on the bottom of the screen there. 817-379-2172. You said I'm not watching a video screen. Well, I'll just give you the number again. 817-379-2172. You can also take part in the chat room. I think you've got to run through a little gymnastics to be able to get on the chat room, but please do so and let me know what you think. You can share your information with us. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. The Wells Report in progress. Israel says it killed one of the Hamas commanders who orchestrated the deadly October 7th attack on southern Israel. This being reported by Voice of America. The Israeli Defense Force and Shin Bet, Israel's domestic security service, issued a joint statement today saying that Nassim Abu Ajina was killed in an airstrike, according to intelligence reports. The statement says Abu Ajina was a commander of the Bet Lahai battalion of the Hamas Northern Brigade and took part in the development of the unmanned aerial vehicles and paragliders involved in the brazen invasion. His elimination significantly harms the efforts of the Hamas terrorist organization to disrupt the IDF's ground activities. That is a quote from the statement earlier today. Elsewhere, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is rejecting calls for a ceasefire as the Israeli military expands its incursion into the northern part of the Gaza Strip. At a rare press conference in which he only took a handful of questions, Prime Minister Netanyahu called Hamas part of an axis of evil and said the stunning assault in the militant group launched on Israeli soil October 7th was, quote, the worst savagery our people have seen since the Holocaust. Netanyahu said the ground incursion Israel recently began would create pressure on Hamas to free hostages without explaining how. This is, by the way, the bias that I say that we analyze, and there's some of it. I've got to say something on that. You've noticed, and you can notice, if you want to do a little bit of analysis on yourself on this de-propagandizing the mainstream media, take a look at some of these news outlets' updates on the Israeli war. If they are more Palestinian-centric than they are Israeli-centric, or if they are unbalanced in a way that you can observe, well, you're dealing with bias. You're dealing with bias. Associated Press. War updates. Everything is about the Gaza Strip and the suffering there. Yes, there is suffering there. But who's causing the suffering? It's not the Israeli Defense Force. It's Hamas. It's Hamas itself. They are the ones that started this. Israel is ending it. This is why using human shields is a war crime. Anybody from Hamas who survives this encounter with the Israeli Defense Force should be immediately packed off to Nuremberg for a reactivation of the war crimes trials, and they should be treated very harshly for doing what they're doing. As a matter of fact, it is incumbent on and an absolute responsibility of world civilization to act in this way, to take out people that use citizens as human shields. That's assuming you believe that Palestinians can be innocent of what's been going on in the Gaza Strip. That is getting more and more complex as more information is being released. More about that coming up in just a couple of moments. The simple case of the matter is this: Israel must act. Israel has been dealing with this for over a half century. Hamas has rashly made an error that may indeed bring down this facade that Palestinians have been using for, again, this half century as a want for statehood, their property back, et cetera, et cetera. Well, they won't do it. And what Hamas has proven is they're not interested in doing it. All the Palestinians want is to kill all the Jews and to retake the land that they had that was given to them in 1947 by Britain, excuse me. The people that they should be protesting are not the Jews. The people they should be protesting are the Brits. But strangely, it just comes back to that thing that I keep saying, that I keep finding out about. I keep seeing it over and over and over, and I have never, ever understood it. And that is rampant, corrosive, savage, atrocious, anti-Jewish bigotry. Not anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is too clean. Think about what happened to these people throughout history. Anti-Semitism? No. Rampant, horrifying, genocidal, corrosive, degenerate, anti-Jewish bigotry. Let's put the ugly words on the ugly acts. And this is ridiculous. There's more. All around the world, Jews are being attacked because of an attack against Jews. It's absurd. A mob stormed a Russian airport over the weekend, trying to stop a plane from arriving in Tel Aviv. Dozens of pro-Palestinian protesters in Barcelona last week occupied a hotel owned by an Israeli businessman. In Berlin, vandals hurled Molotov cocktails at a synagogue and scrawled the Star of David on the doors of homes and apartment buildings where Jews lived. This alarming rise in anti-Semitic acts reported across Europe and the United States in the 3 weeks since Hamas and Israel went to war is striking fear into the lives of Jewish people like Howard Touré. Touré, who owns a delicatessen in the heart of Paris's old Jewish quarter, recently removed the mezuzah from the front door of his home near the Eiffel Tower. The scroll of parchment affixed on the front door is an important symbol in the Jewish faith. But Touré did not want delivery drivers or other passersby to know the family who lives inside is Jewish. On the advice of a rabbi, he took it down and moved it inside. People are frightened. It's absolutely ridiculous. Not only is there corruption of intellect leading to this kind of anti-Jewish bigotry, not only is there that, but the simple case of the matter is that it might be based on nothing more than greed, avarice, and yes, evil. So the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel put out on their LinkedIn page today the leaders of Hamas and their net worth. Abu Marzouk is a billionaire. He's got $3 billion. Khaled Mashal, Ishmael Haniyeh have $4 billion apiece. What is going on with that? Just exactly what's happening? Well, what it is a scam. All the billions and billions of dollars, some from the United States, all of those billions and billions of dollars are finding their way into the pockets of these Hamas terrorists. And it would make sense. You know, you look at the Gaza Strip. If you've ever been to the Gaza Strip, it's ugly and terrible. And it doesn't smell good. It's a terrible place. Why? Billions upon billions upon billions of dollars have been sent into the Palestinian Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Why are they such degenerately terrible places to live? Well, because it looks to me like the entire Palestinian-Israeli hassle over this half century is about enriching the people that are essentially using the Palestinians as attack dogs, standing back and profiting off the misery of both Jews and Palestinians. That's what it's looking like to me. And when you start considering the fact that in order to keep this gravy train going, the kind of propaganda and the kind of just horrifying teaching that the Palestinians have been giving their children regarding Jews becomes more and more and more dark and deep and evil. Is it all about the money? Is it all about the money? Well, let's talk it over. The United States, along with Middle Eastern nations, are stepping up efforts to target a secret Hamas portfolio investment group, or an investment portfolio, government officials believe is worth about $1 billion. You mean there's a terrorist hedge fund? Yeah, it's got Hamas written all over it. U.S. officials said that to target this investment portfolio, the Treasury Department is working with the Gulf Cooperation Council, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates. Following the Hamas terror attacks, U.S. and Saudi officials convened an emergency meeting in Riyadh of the Terrorist Financing Targeting Center, which includes the U.S. and the GCC nations. The meeting was originally scheduled to take place next month. The U.S. officials said there'd be a redoubling of efforts since Hamas' October 7th attack against Israel to use the TFTC, which was created in 2017, the Terrorist Financing Targeting Center, TCFT, to go after Hamas, Hezbollah, and other Iran-aligned militant groups, including by sharing relevant, timely, actionable information. Last week, the Treasury Department leveled sanctions on individuals that officials say are managing assets in a secret Hamas investment portfolio valued between $400 million and $1 billion, according to a U.S. official. The official added the portfolio is generating significant amounts of revenue for Hamas. Or is it generating significant amount of revenue for Hamas leaders? You can make that decision yourself. What I can say is this. The horrors of what has happened over the last 50 years, it's actually 56 years, may have started out with outrage of people who call themselves Palestinians being moved off their land after the Balfour Agreement that created the State of Israel. There may have been genuine anger there that may have led to fisticuffs and then beyond. But as time has gone by, it's gotten worse and worse and worse. And the Palestinian people have also gotten worse and worse and worse. Once the per capita most educated people on the planet, these Palestinians have turned themselves into a terror cell based on their leadership. And yes, this leadership may have tapped into the outrage of Palestinians wondering how come they couldn't live where they were raised their entire life and where their family was raised their entire life. Maybe that was what the beginning was, but it turned out to be very lucrative. Yasser Arafat profited first, probably set up the templates for all the billions that came to these men later. And that would also explain why Yasser Arafat was offered 3 different times, a Palestinian state. Turned them all down. Every single one. Why? Well, because his bank account was getting fatter. That's why. Because all these supplies and money and funding and all this coming in to take care of the Palestinian people, much of which was simply skimmed off the top and into Swiss bank accounts. Are you kidding me? The answer is no. I'm not kidding you. It basically makes a great deal of sense when you finally know that this is all about monetary corruption. Then you start thinking about, now wait a minute. So if all this money is floating around and so on, where else did it float? Who else was enriched by this money coming from the world to essentially perpetuate anti-Jewish bigotry? All these people that for whatever reason have problems with the Jews because they're Jews and nothing more found this wonderful little proxy army of their own that they could use to create misery for those very same Jews, and in so doing created misery for the Palestinians, the so-called Palestinians, that were fighting against the Jews. And these people have been standing there over this bowl of conflict, this bin of misery, and watching these two people tear at each other. How horrifying would it be, just beyond the rather basic horror of that particular scenario, but how much more horrible would it be if we found out that it was simply because a few people wanted billions instead of peace? This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Horror. The horror. There is more news coming up in just a couple of moments. We will have that information for you as we continue on this 31st day of October. My goodness, it's Halloween. Back with more in just a moment.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
This is the Wells Report. John David Wells at your service. Telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. ABC News is reporting months ahead of the bloody rampage in Lewiston, Maine last week. The suspected Maine gunman, Robert Card, had displayed glaring signals that mental health was a serious problem for him. In fact, his mental health was in a drastic decline. His immediate family members knew about it. They were concerned by it and explicitly warned law enforcement that something needed to be done. This according to documents obtained by ABC News via records requests. As far back as January, Card's mental health had already started to decline according to his family. By May, it was worse. They were concerned for his well-being and that he had access to firearms. Despite follow-ups between local police and the Army Reserves regarding Card's apparent paranoia. Verbalized threats to shoot people and recurrent aggressive behavior in recent months, the documents do not indicate that Card was ever taken into protective custody or judged mentally incompetent by medical professionals, which is required to trigger the Maine yellow flag law. On October 25th, Card's repeated warning signs would prove fatal when he would act on his threats in back-to-back massacres that claimed the lives of 18 and injured 13. On May 3rd, Card's ex-wife and their teenage son went to the office of the Topsham School Resource Officer with concerns about Robert Card. This according to an incident report from the responding officer, Sagadahoc County Deputy Chad Carlton. In the caps of the report, a notice to patrol advises, this is all caps now, use caution if responding, unquote, to Card's residence due to his, quote, paranoid behavior, again in caps. and that he has 10 to 15 firearms, all caps again, in his house and or truck. I learned from Card's son his father's mental health is in question. Card's son told me that back in around January, he noticed his father was starting to claim that people were saying things about him while out in public. In public, Card's son said his father would start to claim that people around him were talking about him, even when nowhere nearby, and saying nothing in his direction. Card's son concluded his father was likely hearing voices or starting to experience paranoia, a recurring theme, as Card claimed derogatory things were being said about him, such as calling him a pedophile. Paranoia and anger would turn towards his own family. Card's son recounted in April he visited his father, and Card became very angry, accusing him of saying things about him behind his back. In the aftermath of the carnage that rocked rural Maine last week, a portrait of who Robert Card was is coming into fuller public view. Documents show that worrisome warnings had already been communicated to law enforcement for months. Law enforcement, I do not second-guess law enforcement when it comes to tactics and procedures. There's no point in it. I don't have anything. I don't have any idea about what goes into decision-making of this nature, except for this. That one of the things that we are gifted with in the United States is a group of, shall we say, sentinels. Those sentinels enforce our laws. And those sentinels also enforce those laws with one or both eyes on the constitutional rights that Americans all have, including Robert Card. Now, there are a lot of people second-guessing the police decisions based on the fact that we now know that Robert Card was known to them. Should he have been taken into custody? Should he have been given more mental health counseling and treatment? Yeah. But then again, we also have this freedom thing going here in this country. It shall not be infringed. And it's kind of sort of what we deal with. Now, I live in Texas. As a matter of fact, right down the road, that direction, actually more like that direction, is Fort Worth. The Fort Worth Stockyards is where the West begins. And yeah, the Wild West. There were duels in the streets in Fort Worth, Texas. And it was a much different society then. People wore their firearms, still do. As a matter of fact, we just passed laws to make sure that that could be the case. However, we suffer the same problems here in Texas that are suffered in Maine. You can't take a weapon into a bar. You can take a weapon into a bowling alley unless the management says, no, we don't want weapons in the bowling alley. Constitutional carry means you can just carry a weapon anytime you feel like it, any way you want to. I happen to believe in concealed carry. You really don't need to talk about the weapon that you have on you. But isn't it sad that not in that bowling alley and not in that bar was someone who could step up and stop Robert Card and all these people that are trying to come up with something to make all of this go away? We've got to get rid of all the guns? Negative. Absolutely wrong. The guns aren't the problem. The people are the problem, especially the ones that are suffering acute mental breakdown. We simply must do a better job. It must be benevolent. It must be with an eye toward freedom and liberty. And we have to be a little bit more cautious, too. This is the Wells Report, back with hour number 2 coming up in just a moment.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
Hey, thanks for joining us this morning for the Wells Report, and make sure you share us with all your friends on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, Patreon, and don't forget to check out our Substack column, which will be coming up a little bit later on this afternoon. When you do all this, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you give us those thumbs up. They are really important. Check the notification box so you know when we're on the air, and whatever you do, join us every morning, Monday through Friday, 9 to 11 a.m. Central Time, for the Wells Report.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost.
North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Good morning. My name is John David Wells. We report the news here, honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary. That's not news. Commentary is opinion, yours and mine, and so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. As we come to this hour of this broadcast, we do 2 hours every single day. And a day after the House of Representatives unveiled its aid package for Israel, the Senate Appropriations Committee Chair, Senator Patty Murray of Washington, she's a Democrat, said she and Ranking Member Susan Collins are moving ahead with crafting their own aid package, with President Biden's supplemental serving as a blueprint that would provide aid to both Israel and Ukraine, as well as money for the Indo-Pacific and humanitarian assistance. Talking about that and indeed testifying on that before the Senate Appropriations Committee is Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. These are some of the highlights that we have seen so far in that testimony. And that didn't work. Let me go back here and do it this way. You should be able to see it now. Here we go. Oh, yeah, I forgot about the commercial. Yeah, every now and then it does it. So let's get back to the testimony.
All order. But the Biden administration's national security supplemental request offers us a useful blueprint. And Vice Chair Collins and I are working right now to craft strong bipartisan legislation that meets the national security priorities that the president laid out. That means a package that provides support to the Ukrainians who are at a crucial point in their fight to protect their sovereignty and the end of the butchery of Vladimir Putin's brutal invasion. One that makes clear to other countries looking to copy Putin's aggression that they will fail. And one that replenishes DoD stockpiles as well and bolsters our domestic manufacturing. That is crucial to ensure we have secure supply chains when it comes to our nation's defense. And that after we send Ukraine weapons, we are replacing our stocks with modern American-made arms. And let's be clear, huge supermajorities in the House and Senate favor more support for Ukraine. So getting this funding across the finish line should not be controversial. Meeting this moment also means a package that ensures we stand with Israel as it works to protect its people in the wake of the horrific Hamas attack and deter additional terrorist threats, and one that helps us prevent further escalation of violence in the region and address humanitarian needs. It means a package that strengthens our presence and supports our allies in the Indo-Pacific and helps us keep pace as the Chinese government works aggressively to expand its footprint in the region. And of course, it also means a package that continues our longstanding and all-important tradition of the U.S. leading the global humanitarian response and delivering vital humanitarian aid to save lives in places that are being torn apart by conflict. Whether they are in Ukraine or Israel or Gaza, we cannot lose sight of the needs of civilians whose lives have been upended by war and violence around them. Making sure people have food, water, and medical care isn't just the right and moral thing to do, it also promotes long-term stability and security, combating hopelessness that can spiral into new threats. Let me also say,
all right, that was the featured clip according to C-SPAN. We are watching that, by the way, and we'll have information for you should any come out of that hearing. I wanted to let you know that was going on as Secretary of State Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin were indeed testifying before the Senate Appropriations Committee on some very serious funding for both Ukraine and Israel, Indo-Pacific, et cetera, et cetera. Let's talk a little bit about close to home situations that we have. And what I want to do
Some
here,
automakers believe
what I want to do here is I want to ask for some objectivity here. And I want some objectivity not just on the part of partisans, but I'm talking about partisans of all sides. I'm looking for a little objectivity. I'm looking for a little bit of clarity. I'm looking for something that would make a bit more sense when it comes to dealing with a situation that we have to deal with. And that is an aged president who has serious difficulties. We've never seen anything like this, certainly not in our lifetime. And it's time for us to think about what it actually means. The mainstream media, many people believe, somewhat partially or maybe even in a more major way, responsible for the circumstances surrounding the election of one Joe Biden. And as we come to this conversation, nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody in the mainstream media wants to talk about it. And there are a few people that actually want to talk about it, but one of them is a stiff-necked thistlehead from Louisiana. His name is James Carville. You've heard of him. He's been a Democrat strategist for a very long time. And what he says now is this. It is ludicrous. It is ludicrous for people not to discuss the president's viability as a 2024 presidential candidate. Let me give you some of the information that is rolling around at this particular moment. We've got some polling information that is going to be referenced in this report. So let me share a little bit of that polling information in this video here on the Wells Report.
These polls seem to get at the elephant in the room when it comes to President Biden. For voters, it's his age that they're concerned about, his mental acuity, his health. What does that tell us?
Well, I guess to say the least, the polls are not great, and it tells us that voters are expressing some apprehension here. It's pretty clear. I mean, there's not much else you can say when you look at them. I mean, I guess the best thing you could say is that if anything, they're worse for Trump. But there is apprehension out there. That's undeniable. You can't look at this and not say that you're concerned. It's just, for me to come on television and say, I don't find this alarming or troubling at all would be stupid of me. I mean, I wouldn't do that. I'm sure the White House knows this, by the way. And they don't need to be told that, the president has an age problem.
Yeah. And Carville went on to discuss that in some depth with this particular article being the result of it. Here, let me share it with you. This from Fox News. Democrat strategist James Carville said in an interview with the Washington Post that it was ludicrous to avoid debating President Biden's viability for a second term. Representative Dean Phillips, the Democrat from Minnesota, is expected to announce his plan to challenge Biden in New Hampshire on Friday. This, according to the Washington Post. Phillips has argued the Democrat Party should offer an alternative to President Biden as his poll numbers remain very low. And I have to say this as a basic observation. The idea that President Biden would forego the New Hampshire primary as the leader of the Democrat Party is giving Dean Phillips a huge opening here. A huge opening. After New Hampshire, the Democrat Party wanted Joe Biden to have a big win. He did very well in South Carolina. South Carolina is the next primary. And so the Democrat Party wanted to start their primary season in South Carolina instead of New Hampshire, where the president is not doing well. And so they just changed the schedule. Well, New Hampshire said, no, thank you. We've been first in the nation forever, and we're going to remain first in the nation. Okay. And so the Democrat Party said anybody that wanted to do this was not going to have any kind of Democrat Party support. And so Dean Phillips will be going this alone, apparently. But the leader coming out of the first primary in the 2024 presidential calendar is not going to be President Biden. It's going to be Dean Phillips. Unless there's a favorite son candidate in New Hampshire in the Democrat Party, which I doubt. Especially after these kinds of things. So listen close. The idea this should not be aired and should not be discussed in hushed tones is ludicrous, said James Carville. This needs to be discussed. Concerns about Biden's age and what the Post called historically alarming polling within the Democrat Party have dominated Washington circles. But Biden has thus far not faced serious opposition to being nominated for a second time. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. recently dropped out of a bid for the Democrat nomination, plans to run as an independent. Other Democrat strategists said that a challenge from Phillips was unlikely to affect the president's path to securing the nomination, which, in the parlance of the day, especially regarding the Democrat Party, anything that is said to not really have been made, will not really make a difference, is something that they're incredibly worried about and will likely make a difference. The Democrat Party has backed itself, especially Democrat Party leadership, have backed itself into the opposite talk syndrome, where if you really want to know what's going on, all you have to do is reverse the meaning of everything they say. Oh, this is going to affect President Biden. Oh, this is going to affect President Biden, and we're worried as hell about it. Robert F. Kennedy finally said, you know what? I'm running as an independent because the Democrat Party is in disarray. As a matter of fact, it's not even the Democrat Party. I don't know what that party is. But then again, I have trouble figuring out what the Republican Party is. I have no idea what the Republican Party stands for. Likewise with the Democrat Party. I think these parties just stand for themselves. I think they stand for the self-appointed power elite party. Well, that's not the way this country works. May work elsewhere. France, Spain, may work elsewhere, but it doesn't work here in the United States. Sorry, this is our country. We the people. It's written on the top of the Constitution. And I think that the political forces in the United States are about to get their beaks snapped. Long overdue. Political director and senior advisor to Senator Elizabeth Warren's presidential campaign, Rebecca Piercy, told the outlet that the Biden-Harris campaign does not need to worry about Phillips, which means, of course, they need to worry about Phillips. We all know how old Biden is. I don't think a 2.5-term congressman who is probably not actually known outside his district is the challenge that President Biden would need in order to close the nomination. What about RFK? The Democrat Party made a huge mistake not dealing with RFK on even-handed terms. They don't believe RFK has a chance. Well, none of us believed that Ross Perot had a chance either, but he sure managed to take George H.W. Bush out of his second term. So what are these people talking about? This willingness to ignore President Biden's obvious mental deficiencies has essentially permeated through the Democrat Party and Democrat leadership. Well, once you ignore the fact that President Biden has trouble walking a flight of stairs and making a coherent statement and having a public event without falling asleep in the middle of it, has led to ignoring other things that the American people don't need them to ignore. And it's time for the Democrat Party to wake up, especially if they're in a situation where they can't wake up Joe Biden. And waking up Joe Biden beyond this half-sleep, sleepwalking thing the president is doing is not possible. It's time to move on. What are your thoughts? 817-379-2172. Let me know. This is the Wells Report.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
This is the Wells Report. John David Wells here. I've just gotten an alert from the Washington Examiner. The Israeli military has destroyed the house of Saleh al-Awri, a senior Hamas commander in the West Bank. Now, that's not the Gaza Strip. Remember, there has been Israeli action, military action, in the Gaza Strip trying to chase down Hamas. Well, the West Bank is on the other side of the country, about midway up on the east coast of Israel, and that is run not by Hamas, but by the Palestinian Authority with Mahmoud Abbas. Israeli officials singled out al-Aruri and a handful of other senior leaders following the October 7th terrorist attacks in southern Israel, which killed 1,400 people, the vast majority of whom were civilians. Al-Aruri is believed to be living in Lebanon. His house was not occupied and set for demolition last week, this according to Reuters. Engineering forces, the IDF, and the Israeli Defense Forces operated tonight in the village of Aurora in the Binyamin Brigade area to demolish the home of terrorist that is now disappeared, thankfully, because of the fact that Washington Examiner webpage just vanished. So that is something that we'll have to deal with at another moment. That being said, that is up to the minute news. So, getting back to President Biden and that which cannot be spoken of, Minnesota Democrat Representative Dean Phillips is speaking of it and says that the president is infirm. He says it this way: look, just because he's old, that's not a disqualifier. But being old, in decline, and having numbers that are clearly moving in the wrong direction, it's getting into red alert kind of stuff. Phillips was speaking with The Atlantic magazine. He admitted he does not believe that President Biden will beat former President Donald Trump next November and said, quote, everybody without exception, unquote, shares his fears. He claimed Biden allies would often tell him in private conversations that President Biden should not run for a second term, but have been unwilling to comment publicly on the matter. The dissonance, Phillips said, would make Trump a Trump victory far more likely. Phillips said plunging into the race will help Trump keep away from the presidency, but others need to be convinced. Anonymous Democrats who spoke to The Hill worry that Phillips' bid could splinter off votes from Biden and create further uncertainty. Well, that's what has to happen. Look, you know, I'm not talking to you as a Republican partisan. I'm talking to you as an American citizen. The president is not sufficiently capable to continue in this job. He's not. The emperor new clothes idea that the Democrats are willing to put forward is only based on two things. Either they are willing to have a rudderless America with a president who cannot cope with basic day-to-day things, or they want to keep intact Joe Biden as a figurehead president to be run by the presidium behind him, unelected, unknown, essentially operating in the dark. A Democrat star chamber or leftist star chamber, more befitting the Politburo than the office of the presidency. Those are the only two reasons. The people of the United States, as I've said on many occasions, are responsible for Joe Biden being in the White House in the first place. The willingness for 81 million Americans to set aside reality for the sake of handing political power to unknown persons. I said this before the 2020 election. I said that if you're voting for Joe Biden, you have no idea who you're voting for, because Joe Biden's not going to run the presidency, and that was back then. He looks like a professional tennis star now in comparison to the way he is. He can barely move. The president is in trouble, and the idea that he could run for a second term is preposterous. What are your thoughts? 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. The Wells Report in progress for Halloween.
Nobody wants to get ripped off, broken into, or robbed, but nobody wants to pay a lot of money to have their home protected either. I've got an offer to tell you about to provide home security for your home for less than $1 a day. For real, with no installation or equipment charges. And this is from a company rated #1 by a leading consumer research company. According to the facts, most of you won't even call unless there's a burglary in your neighborhood or something bad happened. So let's give you a reason. Save money. For less than $1 a day with no other costs, you can get your home secured. Plus, get a lifetime equipment replacement warranty. You need protection for your home. Call the Home Security Hotline right now.
Get your home secured for less than $1 a day, and every caller today immediately qualifies for free installation. Call now.
Call 877-275-0973. 877-275-0973. That's 877-275-0973.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost. How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
This is the Wells Report. Good morning. It's Tuesday. I'm John David Wells. I love playing tennis. It's a great sport. I had a real good time playing it, and don't play much anymore after I lost my last match to my son Colton, 58,200,000 to nothing. Anyway. One of my tennis heroes was Petros Pete Sampras, 14 major singles careers, 7 Wimbledon titles, 2 Australian Opens, 5 U.S. Open wins, 64 ATP Tour level singles titles. Unbelievable. But I think the greatest victory he ever had in his entire life was marrying actress Bridget Wilson. She had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer a while back. And Pete Sampras, in his typical quiet style, said nothing. But now, the retired tennis star, he's 52, shared details about his wife's illness in a statement released via the ATP Tour. So that came out in an X post, and I want you to hear it. As most have come to know, I'm a pretty quiet and private person. However, this past year has been an exceptionally challenging time for my family. I've decided to share what's been going on. Last December, my wife, Bridget, was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Since then, she's had major surgery, pushed through chemotherapy, and continues with targeted maintenance therapy. It's hard to watch someone you love go through a challenge like this. However, seeing our boys step up and be such strong supporters of Bridget, myself, and each other has been amazing. Watching Bridget continue to be an incredible mom and wife through all of this has been inspiring. I've also learned it's very hard to reach for support when something simply is too hard to talk about. With that said, I will end this by humbly asking for good thoughts and prayers for our family as Bridget continues to thrive on her healing journey. Thank you. Wilson Sampras began her career as an actress in the early 90s. You may have heard that name before. She had a starring role in The Wedding Planner, in fact. She was a star in soap operas Santa Barbara. She made appearances on Saved by the Bell, The Street, CSI Miami. In film, she directed the 2001 The Wedding Planner as bride-to-be Fran Donnelly, opposite Jennifer Lopez and Matthew McConaughey. Mortal Kombat's Billy Madison, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and more. Prior to her acting career, Wilson Sampras gained attention as the winner of Miss Teen USA in 1990. And now is fighting her way through ovarian cancer. So, Pete Sampras asking for our support for his wife, Bridget Wilson Sampras. And so I think we should. I think we should hold that wonderful, straightforward thought of support, love, and care for this family. And so let's. What do you say? And so, moving on. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on here in our nation. And this is something that I brought up before. And it's something that is going to be turned aside, but still is annoying on its face. We've got a few things that we want to talk about, but first we want to talk a little bit about what's going on with regards to what is a possible constitutional crisis being pushed by the Democrat Party. And so let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. USA Today is currently reporting that Senate Democrats want to subpoena key Thomas and Alito allies over Supreme Court ethics lapses. This being written by John Fritzy from USA Today. Senate Democrats significantly ramped up a probe into the series of ethics scandals swirling around the Supreme Court, announcing they would vote to subpoena several connected donors who either had paid for lavish travel accepted by the justices or had been present on those trips. Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, the Democrat chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, the Democrat from Rhode Island, a member of that committee, an outspoken critic of the current Supreme Court, said that individuals who would be the subject of those subpoenas either refused to answer questions or offered limited information that fell short of the committee request. Durbin said the committee would target Harlan Crow, who was paid for trips accepted by Justice Clarence Thomas, who also purchased a property partially owned by Thomas, and the justice did not initially note on financial disclosure forms. Durbin also mentioned Robin Arkley, the owner of a mortgage company who hosted Justice Samuel Alito for a fishing trip in Alaska in 2008, and Leonard Leo, a well-connected conservative legal advocate who has appeared at many of the trips taken by the justices. The Senate Judiciary Committee is expected to vote on the subpoenas as soon as next week. Why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? There are two reasons. One, to create smoke and fury in the air to distract the American people away from the smoke and fury that's about to be thrown in the air with the Biden family and their legal situations and their ethics situations. That's where the original spark for this smoldering fire surrounding the Supreme Court started. There's also another reason. As I have said many times on this broadcast, the Democrat Party has, in times past and currently, sought to push their political agenda items, their policy items, forward, not through what is as close to honest legislation as possible, but through the honest process of debate, interaction, compromise, vote. They don't want to do that because a lot of the things that they want to do, for example, stopping you from cooking your food on a gas stove, would, okay, pun intended, go up in flames in the House of Representatives, if not the Senate, or both, because they're ridiculous. The idea, for example, that the sky is actually falling. There's news out here today. My goodness gracious, we only have 5 years left to act before the Earth kills us with our own atmosphere. That is preposterous. That is preposterous. And oh, by the way, if our atmosphere is going to kill us in 5 years, it's too late to do anything anyway. The idea that we could do something to perhaps reverse an existential change in the Earth's atmosphere in 5 years is laughable. This is what happens when you stop teaching Earth science to our children. It's ridiculous. And the entire preposterous notion that our atmosphere is going to kill us, and the only thing that we can do is pay politicians to save ourselves, belies the absurdity on its face. But for whatever reason, they've kept after it. They've kept after it, not just the politicians in the United States, but around the world. It's an epic world swindle, is what it is. And that's all it is. But if you can get a court to say, especially the Supreme Court of the United States, that your policy idea is actually real, by, say, for example, enacting a clearly unconstitutional law and then having the Supreme Court uphold it, playing politics instead of actually interpreting the Constitution, then you get your policy agenda passed, not through the House of Representatives, the Senate, through a conference committee and then a signature by the President of the United States, but by 9 people, not elected, appointed, and sit in judgment of policy items. They didn't have any problem with the Supreme Court until conservatives were in the majority, and then suddenly, these trips being taken by Clarence Thomas as a guest of Trammell Crow's owner and CEO, well, that had to be taken care of. The threats of Chuck Schumer, overturn Roe v. Wade, and you will reap the whirlwind. Really. The ridiculous notion that people should be able to demonstrate outside the private homes of Supreme Court justices put out there by Merrick Garland. I wonder what Merrick Garland would have thought had he been in a situation where that had happened, if he had been successfully put on the Supreme Court of the United States, something that would have been a disaster based on his conduct as Attorney General. But then again, only the conservative justices' houses were picketed. And so what we have is we quite literally have legislative/political interference with the highest court of the land. There is exactly one body constitutionally able to make changes to the Supreme Court of the United States. It is not the Senate of the United States, the House of Representatives, not even the president. That is the Supreme Court of the United States itself. Now, sure, we could, by all means, the House of Representatives, the Senate, and so on and so forth, could adopt or fashion a constitutional amendment changing the Supreme Court of the United States if they wanted to, but they haven't done that. What they want to do is they want to exert power over the judicial branch, the legislative branch, essentially molesting the judicial branch of our government. Can't do it. You just can't do it. All of this is noise and smoke signifying nothing, but they won't let it go. The people of the Supreme Court do not need senators who can't figure out what a woman is trying to evoke or impose some kind of ethics code that very likely none of the senators actually follow in the first place. If senators were the be-all, end-all when it came to ethics, why is there a Senate Ethics Committee? And so this is preposterous on its face. But what we have here is we have a bunch of politicians trying to protect the President of the United States. And once again, showing the difference between the political parties. Here is a president that we have right this very minute who is clearly compromised by business dealings of his family, has not been forced to account for any of it. His family hasn't been forced to account for any of it. The Department of Justice refuses to prosecute the Biden family, any members of the Biden family, refuses to move forward with meaningful charges against Hunter Biden, caught dead to rights, committing felony after felony after felony, refuses to do any of this stuff. And yet these are the people that are trying to impose an ethics code on the Supreme Court? Only as a distraction. That's all this is. It's not going anywhere. So why the distraction then? Well, because apparently Dick Durbin and his friends in the United States Senate believe there is no amount of damage that can be done to the institutions of the United States government or this nation or the psyche of the citizenry that is too awful to not evoke if you have to protect President Biden. The Republican Party would have never done this with President Trump, who is a far better president, in my view, just simply from a standpoint of what he got done and how the people of the United States relate to him. That's not a partisan statement. That's just an evaluation. It's an opinion. But look at what the Democrats are doing to try to protect their malfunctioning president. The Republicans, much better at circular firing squads. But the Democrat Party encircles their president and defends them beyond rational thought into ridiculous absurdity. At least that's the way it looks to me. What are your thoughts on this? This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. President Trump's in the news. He's fighting with Bill Barr. You want to know over what? Good. Stay right there.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
Call 877-512-3895. That's 877-512-3895. 877-512-3895.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right, for about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back, but you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now.
Call 866-245-6155. That's 866-245-6155. Again, 866-245-6155. 866-245-6155.
This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. There is a perilous error in American politics that is being made as a matter of policy by the Biden administration, and there's no reason why they shouldn't make that mistake. In fact, it's probably not a mistake under the current context. That is hypocrisy. Hypocrisy. There are people sitting in jail who moved to the Capitol on January 6th. They're in federal penitentiary, in fact. There are people who essentially ran around the country burning, looting, killing, beating all manner of people for all manner of things that were called social justice protesters in mostly peaceful things that burned down, peaceful demonstrations that burned down buildings, tried to incinerate police officers, all manner of things. Do they sit in penitentiaries around the country? Maybe, but mostly no. And so when you start talking about how white supremacists and extremists are the biggest problem in the United States from a domestic terror standpoint, well, that sort of belies some of the problems that Jews are having in the United States right now. And Fox News' Peter Doocy decided that what he was going to do was ask Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre what the administration's standpoint on that was.
Thank you, Karine. Does President Biden think the anti-Israel protesters in this country are extremists?
What I can say is what we've been very clear about this. When it comes to anti-Semitism, there is no place. We have to make sure that we speak against it very loud and be very clear about that. Remember, what the president decided to, when the president decided to run for president, is what he saw in Charlottesville in 2017, when he saw neo-Nazis marching down the streets of Charlottesville with vile anti-Semitic just hatred. And he was very clear then, and he's very clear now. And he's taken actions against this over the past 2 years, and he's continued to be clear. There is no place for this type of vile and despite this kind of rhetoric.
And we hear you guys, though, talk about extremists all the time. It is usually about MAGA extremists. So what about these protesters who are making Jewish students feel unsafe on college campuses? Are they extremists?
I've been very, very clear. We are calling out any form of hate. Any form of hate. It is not acceptable. It should not be acceptable here. And we are going to continue to call that out. And let me be very clear. This is a president that has continued to have that fight in his office, in this administration. You know, when he repealed Trump's Muslim ban on his first day in office, that is something that this president did. He also established an inter-policy committee to counter Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and related forms of bias and discrimination. We have taken this very, very, very seriously, from the president all the way on down.
Does President Biden look at these anti-Israel protests on college campuses and think it's nice to see that the country's youth are so involved, or does he think the next generation is doomed?
Here's the thing. There's no place for hate in America. No. I'm telling you, there's no place for hate in America, and we condemn any anti-Semitic threat or incident in the strongest terms. And you heard me say at the top, I gave a message to students who are feeling under threat right now, right? You know, we're tracking these threats very closely. We are there for them. No student should have to be able to go to class, live on campus in fear. And, you know, these incidents, these reported anti-Semitic incidents at schools and on campuses, that should not be. We have to condemn them. We have to condemn them.
Okay, so where are the wanted posters? Where are the wanted posters? Where are the declarations that MAGA Republicans, sort of like the MAGA Republican ones? MAGA Republicans are political extremists. Well, what about pro-Hamas Palestinian demonstrators? She never answered that question. She kept pivoting that we're against hate. Well, are they extremists or not? We keep pivoting. We are absolutely foursquare behind hate, against hate. Really? Seriously. This hypocrisy is fodder for all manner of social unrest. And we are living through that right now. Is it as bad as I've ever seen? In point of fact, no, it is not. As bad as I ever saw it was back in the late 60s. I was just a kid. I was 10 years old, but I was in fear for my country. And that was about bigotry, discrimination, racism. It's funny. Those kids that were fighting against all of those things are now running the government of the United States. And theoretically, they're still against all of those things, although they're glaring hypocrisies. But where is their righteous indignation regarding the racism against Jews? Blind spot, you think? Yeah, me too. This is the Wells Report. The executive producer of this broadcast is Dirk Steele. Our associate producer and publicist is Jube Dankworth of NetMediaConsultants.com. I'm John David Wells. See you tomorrow. Thanks much, wonderfuls. I appreciate it. Happy Halloween, you guys. Don't eat too much sugar. Do not eat too much sugar. Ha ha. Don't eat too much sugar. It's bad for your teeth, and it'll screw up your entire life. And trust me, that's coming from somebody who's badly hypoglycemic, and oh, by the way, was reminded of it over the weekend. Oh, my God. I can tell you now, I was at a Texas State Guard thing. It was the NCO Academy. And about halfway through the obstacle course, my blood sugar crashed, like you read about. And I had to walk 1.5 miles after that. I had to finish the obstacle course, go to the leader reaction course. It would be a couple of hours. And then I had to walk 1.5 miles back to base. And that was a hard, hard day. And so that being said, don't eat too much sugar. Just balance your food. I'm just telling you. This has been the Wells Report. God bless you and all like you. Not too many of us, huh? And have yourself a great day, and I'll see you again tomorrow for the Sugar Buzz edition of the